Good morning, dolls, and welcome to Little Gretchen's workshop. So today I'm going to work on a project I've been looking forward to doing for quite some time now. And I've got this wonderful little metal tub that I wanted to fill with fresh fish or raw fish or recently caught fish. So I've got several pieces of clay here. Now this clay is actually the Sculpey. It's like the living doll Sculpey. It's a little bit firmer than the regular Sculpey. So I'm going to kind of need to warm it up with my hands to soften it so I can get it into the shapes that I need to make. I need it to be small pieces that would be about the size of a 12 scale fish. Now, dolls, I'm not going to make these fish very precise or very detailed. Just need them to be recognizable as fish. So you can see here I've taken a piece that I consider the long body part of the fish, and then I added a piece to the end, and I'm kind of smushing it together to make it the tail. Now, I'm really not sure what type of fish I'm making. Again, I just needed to be recognizable as fish. Now, I did add a little oil to my clay to kind of soften it up, but you also can use liquid Sculpey to soften up your clay, so that the consistency will be softer and easier for you to work with. Now, I probably shouldn't be trying to make this right on the edge of the tile, but I did, dolls. But I'm just shaping it and thinning it down because the piece that I chose was quite clumpy. Now, always be careful with your hands and your fingers when you're using a craft knife, and never ever cut toward yourself when you're trimming things down. Now I'm using this little rubber tool that I was gifted, and I'm using it to shape my fish, kind of like elongating it and trimming it down. Now you can use a picture of a fish as a reference to kind of help you. So growing up, the three types of fish that we ate all the time were white bass, catfish, and rainbow trout. And I remember there being a dispute about whether rainbow trout and pickerel were the same fish. I'm not sure, but these fish will probably be a combination of all four. Now, I really like to use this type of clay because it's transparent or gives a transparent look, which really works well when you start to shade the fish. And after you've locked down the basic shape of what you want your fish to look like, some of the details will help bring it out to make it look a little bit more realistic. Now in this frame, I've got kind of the basic shape for all of my fish, and I'm working on kind of trying to refine or define some of the standard components of a fish. Now, I'm not giving the fish all the little extra fins and everything. So although I'm not doing all the real teeny tiny extras, I really do want it to be recognizable, especially based on the shape and the proportions. Now, dolls, I want you to keep in mind it took me a lot longer to do this than what's shown in this video. As slow as all of this looks, this has been sped up quite a bit. Now, I will say I put quite a bit of time into kind of thinning out or feathering out the tail, because if the tail looked too thick and clunky and opaque, I think that would make it look really unnatural. Now, after I was pretty satisfied with the shape and the thickness of my fish, I used the side of my little wire tool to add texture to it to give the impression of scales. And just a couple rolls of that textured tool really heightens the realism. And another thing you definitely want to keep in mind in the process is keeping your fish to a size that they'll fit inside the container that you plan on staging them in. Now, does it would be a best practice for you to size your fish or measure them to kind of make them a uniform size, but nothing in nature is really uniform. Now, there's definitely symmetry, but all the fish are not going to be exactly the same. Even if they're the same type of fish, you're catching them all the same day, they're all going to be slightly different sizes. And if there aren't some slight variation in size, that's a little suspect. And as I want you to take note that I've used more than one type of tool to create my fish. I used my craft knife, I used a little rubber tool, and here I'm using a little orange stick that you normally use for fingernails. So learn to use whatever you have and use what works best for you. There is no right or wrong tool. Now, if someone out there is a fish expert or, really into fish or really looking for hyper realism, these fish may be quite disappointing to you, but I think they'll be realistic enough that if someone was to look into my scene and see them, they will on sight be recognizable as raw, uncooked, or recently caught fish. Making these fish brings back a really precious and wonderful childhood memory. When I was about 8 years old, I spent the summer with my Aunt Maggie and Uncle Henry at their house. And that Saturday, we got up really early because Aunt Maggie and Uncle Henry had a really big garden, and me and Aunt Maggie worked in the garden all morning picking fresh fruits and vegetables. And when my Uncle Henry and his friends got back from fishing, there were buckets of fish that needed to be cleaned and prepped for frying. And I was allowed to assist my Aunt Maggie in getting the fish together. So now that my fish are all done, I want to go ahead and get them baked so I can get to the fun part of painting and shading them. Now I'm kind of draping the little pieces of fish over like a skewer because I want them to kind of look a little bit bent. I don't want them to all lay flat. So if I bake them laying on top of the skewer, it'll give them kind of a curve. Now, dolls, you can see that I created all the fish laying flat on the tile, but I'm gently using the edge of my craft knife to lift them and drape them over the wooden skewer. And although they seem quite thin and fragile, they'll be fine after they're fully baked. Now, I'll be baking these in my home oven. I want to encourage you, dolls, to always follow the instructions on your polymer clay package and absolutely never put polymer clay in a microwave. Now that they're all arranged on the tile, let me go ahead and get them baked. Now here they are fresh out of the oven and they're nice and firm, so I'm not worried about them breaking. Now they are pretty thin, so I still have to handle them gently, but I don't have any immediate concerns about them breaking. And just as I said that, I broke a tail off, but it was a pretty clean break, so it won't be a problem me gluing it back on. But I just want to try it and fit all my fish into my little tub to see how they'll fit. And I love how after the clay is baked, it actually looks a little bit more transparent. Now here I just want to show you really quick this little tail piece that broke off. It's a perfectly clean break. I just need a teeny weeny bit of glue to make it unnoticeable. Now while that little mended tail piece is drying, I'm going to go ahead and add my first layer of color, and I'm using black mixed with alcohol. And as I really like to use alcohol mixed with my acrylic paint when I'm trying to stain, especially shade things, because it gives me a thinner consistency, and I really love how the alcohol evaporates really quickly. Now you can definitely do this mixing your paint with water. It just takes it longer to dry. I just really love that when the alcohol evaporates, it leaves a really nice stain. Now, dolls, when you're painting or staining your fish, you can take as much or as little time as you like, but I really believe that adding one thin layer at a time gives you a better result than adding one thick coat. But there are no rules with this. Work on it until you're happy with what you see. And at this point, I was really starting to get excited because by the time I got to the second coat, I was really liking the way it looked because it was beginning to take on the idea I had in my mind. And that's always really exciting because in the process of creating miniatures, there's always a stage where you kind of question your judgment. But I've learned over the years to continue to work until I see what's in my mind's eye in front of me. And at this part of the video, dolls, it really amuses me because I was trying really hard with this project to be as neat as possible and not get glue and product all over my hands. But when I really started to get into the creative process, I just couldn't help it anymore. It just gets messy for me. I'm just messy. I'm a messy miniaturist. Little Gretchen, the messy miniaturist. Now I'm just bringing it up a little bit close so you can see some of the texture, the details, and how it looks with the first stain. Now the next layer I wanted to add was a little bit of silver metallic paint because growing up the fish we always had kind of had a silvery metallic look to it. And again here I've added silver metallic paint to some alcohol, and I'm giving a nice thin layer on top of those two coats of the black mixed with the alcohol. Now, I really love the combination of the color of the clay, the two coats of the black, and now adding the silver. It's making the body look slightly opaque, and which to me makes it look a lot more realistic. And the fact that all the layers are thin, it kind of gives shadows of all three dimensions. And I'm doing the same thing with the silver, adding the first layer, allowing it to dry, and then going back over it because I want to make sure that it has that kind of luminous cast that fish have when you see them in the water. Now, the black paint was just any kind of black acrylic paint, but I do want to show you really quick what type of silver that I was using. And this is not sponsored, but I like folk art, and the color is called Silver Anniversary. Now, by the time the second layer with the silver anniversary paint was dry, I went on with my third layer of color, which is my antique gold rub and buff. Now, Dolls, you know I love rub and buff for so many other things, but I think it's really going to do the trick to give, like I said, that third layer of color that I think will really bring the fish to life. Now, I'm putting it on very, very lightly and just barely touching it because I don't want it to be heavy. I don't want it to coat it. I just want to give a really slight shimmer to the fish. Now again, this took a lot longer than is shown in this video because I just barely wanted to dab it on. I sped the video up quite a bit so that it wouldn't take so long, but I was really, really gentle about this process because I didn't want it to go on too heavy. But I really do think this layer of gold rub and buff really added something special to the fish. And at this point, I was really starting to get amused because from this distance or this perspective, it looks like I have several fish out of water on my table. And at this point, I could have just giggled the rest of the video because I was really amused at how things were turning out. So now that the bodies of the fish are just about done, I'm feeling really pleased with the overall look. I like the way they're clumping together. I like the way the curve works. And the curve really allows them to clump together the way I imagine it in my mind. So let me try it in the tub one more time before I work on the eyes. And just adding that slight bend really makes them fit and more or less contour to the shape of the inside of the tub. And I think it looks a lot more natural than if they were all laying flat. So I pulled out my dimensional magic when it came to adding a little detail to the eye. And Dolls, I didn't do anything extreme or amazing. I just added a little white acrylic paint to the socket and then put a little dot of black in the center and kind of made the dot of black really small. And after I allowed that to dry, I put a teeny dot of dimensional magic on top of all of it. And you can clearly see from this angle that worked out really well. And now that my tiny fish have their eyes in, I'm ready to start staging them. Now, there's going to be quite a bit of playing in these next few frames because I needed to determine the fish to ice ratio that I need in each tub to make it look natural. Now, this is a great example of how a project like this, there is not an exact science. I made more fish than I needed. I actually have more ice than I need, which is always a safe practice, but I need to determine how many I need in each bucket, and I need to arrange it so it looks random. So this project clearly presents the opportunity for me to use the concept of using fillers. And Dolls, when I reference fillers, I'm suggesting that you use something as a base or a platform to fill up the void space at the bottom of your project and to raise the profile of your premium supplies. And in the midst of all the playing, I realized that I probably had enough fish and ice to create 2 tubs of fish and possibly 3, depending on how I arrange things. And as I played, I was really amused at how the fish fit into the tub and how the tails naturally fit and kind of draped around each other in the arrangement. So I was really excited. Now, right now I'm doing more or less what you call a dry fit, tri fit before I add any glue to just kind of get a concept of how things will fit into the little tubs together. And right while I was playing with the 2 tubs, I remembered a fruit tray or fruit crate that I created when I made a lot of my produce. And I just wanted to try out some of the ice and pieces to see how the fish would look inside that. So, Dolls, I want to encourage you that when you're working on a project like this, don't be too set and rigid as to what you're going to do, because my original thought was the little silver tub, and then I found another tub, and then I pulled out the wooden crate. Like, let your thoughts flow freely to see what you can come up with, because imagination blossoms in the midst of play. And by the time I got through playing, this is what I came up with. Now, I hadn't added any glue, and I still wanted to add some shine to the fish. So I went on and pulled out my dimensional magic. Now, here in this frame, you can see I have all the fish stuck to a piece of double stick tape. So I'm just brushing on one single layer of my dimensional magic in the glossy formula to make all my fish look like they're wet and slippery. I'm always surprised at what a little shine can do. Now I'm preparing to add my fillers to my containers, and for the little wooden crate I'm going to use a piece of scrap foam. But first I'm adding my weld bond glue to the base so that the little platform or the filler will have something to stick to. Now for this project, I've chosen a really thin piece of packing plastic, and I actually split it in half to make it even thinner because I didn't want my ice and the fish to be running over out of the little crate. And after I added the little piece of foam, I put glue on top of it as well and all around the perimeter of the foam and the box. After I was done adding my glue, I added the first layer of ice cubes. Now, after adding the ice cubes, I added more glue to the top of certain areas of the surface of the ice so that I could place my fish. And I continue this process, adding more ice and glue as needed as I placed and arranged my fish. Now, in the process of doing this, you're going to need to use an ample amount of glue. Now, don't use it in excess, but you do need to use enough to secure your fish and the ice. It might look a little glunky at first, but the glue is going to dry absolutely clear. And when I was finally satisfied with my little arrangement, I set that aside to dry. Now, when it came to the silver tub, I used the exact same approach. I just had to build up the platform or the filler pieces a little bit higher. Still using the same type of material, I created a base in the center, and little by little, I stacked it until it got to the height or the profile to clearly display my fish on ice. Now keep in mind when you do yours, it won't be exactly like mine when it's done. And just because it's different doesn't mean it's wrong. Because depending on what you use as your platform and how you build it, how many layers, how high you want your stack to be, that's going to be all up to you. I just want to give you the basis of the steps that you'll need to follow to get this result. Your arrangement will be absolutely custom, so you have to treat this on a case-by-case basis. And when it was all done, I was really pleased with my 2 containers of fish. The only thing I added that I didn't share is I added a little red alcohol ink around the gills because my grandmother told me if you don't see any red around the gills, it's not fresh, so don't buy it. Now, if this is your first time watching and you want to see more content like this, go ahead and subscribe. And always look for me on Mondays after 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And let me know in the comments what you like most about this video. And as a quick reminder, Little Gretchen's Workshop now has a store open on eBay. So shop early for best selection because all quantities are limited. And until next time, I'm looking forward to seeing you right here on Little Gretchen's Workshop. Bye-bye now, dolls.